Hey, Sharon. When
Hi.
you hear about real estate, you always hear location, location, location. How important is the neighborhood?
Okay. Um, the it depends on the neighborhood is one part of the equation. It depends on who the buyer is, what they're looking for, what they plan to do with it. So if they're buying it and they want to be able to generate tenants as well as living in it, there's a certain streets closer to the main streets, more in the back streets, the quieter inside the neighborhoods, where that's easier to do. If they're looking for strictly rental purpose properties, that's another thing. If they're looking to live in it, then the next thing will be what matters to them. Do they need it close to a highway for commuting? Do they need it for the schools? Do they need it for a musically gifted child, for example, and they want, like, now we're just really honing in, right? Or do they not have a car and they need access to all of the grocery stores and need to be on a bus route? So my point being is not only a neighborhood, but where you are placed within the neighborhood. I can give you neighborhoods that people have been told for years, don't buy in that neighborhood, when maybe it's one or two streets in that neighborhood that's an issue. And again, depending what the issue is. Okay, so like sometimes the name or the reputation is gained unfairly and it's not justice, and other times there are reasons for concern. Like, do you want to buy a house and you've got 3 small children under 5 and the house next door is a halfway house?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you don't want to do that. If you're buying a house and you want rental properties, you're not going to be as selective as you were if you're moving your children in, for example, right? Like, nobody wants to buy in a bad neighborhood, but I will take what you need to accomplish in your home, and I will take the maximum that you can afford to pay. And I will take those numbers and I will start working them backwards. So if you need to be close to the transit, I can put you in these neighborhoods. If you really need a quality neighborhood and to raise kids and raise a family in that neighborhood, then maybe, and you're okay with distance, then I can put you in a neighborhood that caters to that. So I'm going to look at it and I'm going to see what your top 3 priorities are, right? So I'm not going to name any towns or neighborhoods. I don't think it's fair to them. But I'm just saying that if all you can afford does not allow you to buy that pre-construction home in the latest up and coming being developed neighborhood, maybe there's a neighborhood just down the street that is being rejuvenated. Okay. And that it might have had a bad reputation for just reason 30 years ago.
Well, look at the Distillery District. That used to be like the worst neighborhood in Toronto.
Yeah. Right. And so, like there's places that you couldn't walk. There's places you locked your car when you were driving through that today you can go stroll any hour of night.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's always the neighborhoods that are being rejuvenated. There's always, and there are, like maybe some want to be in a neighborhood where all the families moving in as new homes. So we just go strictly with the newest subdivision in town. Right? Some will buy and they're like, okay, well, I don't want to pay more than 5 years for a home. Well, we can get that home as an infill project in a, not as new neighborhood. And the house will cost you less because it's not a newer neighborhood, but you get the newer home.
Well, aren't sometimes older neighborhoods desirable because you've got the mature canopy and all that sort of stuff?
So that's why you're looking at priorities. Right? The neighborhood location is not everything in terms of like, it's not the canopy that we give it. Like, that location still has to tie in with the buyer's priorities and their needs and what is compromisable, what is movable and what isn't. And obviously their budget. So sometimes I start with a budget because I know with this price, okay, automatically I know what neighborhoods we're not going to get you into with the budget.
You can't get into the bridal path for 500 grand.
Yeah. So where can I put you for the 500 grand? You'd be surprised.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then I'm going to give you alternatives. So then maybe if you've got to be in that neighborhood, then maybe we can go with a townhouse instead of a freehold.
Okay.
Because that's what your budget has, and we can get you in there and make some equity, and then you can still stay in that neighborhood and upgrade to the semi-detached or the detached.
So I guess it depends very much on the buyer as to whether it's better to get a worse house in a better neighborhood or a better house in a worse neighborhood.
Exactly. Or less of a house in terms of
smaller
square footage
rather than worse.
But, you know, compromise on square footage, compromise on the number of garage, compromise on, you know, you might want a 3-car garage, but maybe you can only afford the carport right now. That's not a bad thing if it gets you in the neighborhood you want, or you've got family there, or you got friends there and you want to be there. So, you know, what constitutes the right neighborhood for you has to feed into your quality of life, into your work, your commute, your accessibility to the things that matter to you. What if, you know, maybe you need to be near a hospital because you work there, or one of your family members do. Whereas for someone like me, that wouldn't work too well.
I would think commute time would be super important for a lot of jobs, because it's like if you're working 8-10 hours a day and then adding another couple hours of commute time in the morning and evening, like you have no life after that.
You have no life. Fortunately, even with the adjustments that have been made with a lot of people since they've gone back to work, they've had a lot more flex jobs. So they're only having to go into the office 1 or 2 days a week. And because they're only going in that 1 or 2 days a week, they don't mind the long commute. If they had to do it 5 or 6 days a week, different story.
Right.
But 1-2 days, they're like, you know what? I can do it. And if need be, then I just can't make it in that week. You know, if it's the weather, if it's the whatever. So there's a lot more flexibility. Doesn't mean they want to do the commute still, but they've got more flexibility still. So, you know, it really comes down to some people, like, they're like, okay, I do shift work. I really need the street quiet. Okay. I can't guarantee what your neighbors are going to do, but I can make sure the traffic flow in the street, it's not off a main highway. I can make sure it's not on a bus route. I can make sure there's no fire station right there on the corner. Those kind of things.
I can attest to that. I rented a property in an apartment in Brampton, and the balcony overlooked a intersection on a main street. So like 3 a.m, some guy on a Harley would be, you know, pulling up to taking off from the light, and like that would wake you up every time. There were trucks on the road, and like, you know, the Harley I always found annoying, because it's like, you know, you don't need an engine that loud. Like trucks, well, they're hauling a bunch of stuff, but it's still like late at night. It's still waking you up. It can really have a huge impact on your quality of life, and it's something I never considered when I was moving in there. You know, getting woken up a couple times a night, you can get pretty tired pretty fast.
In the mid 80s, and I did not I've not been a good sleeper. And I've always had to be very careful to make sure I can get sleep, because I can go a long time without sleep. At that time, it was certainly less of an issue. But in the mid 80s, I took an apartment on the lakeshore in Etobicoke.
Okay.
Beautiful spot, right by the water, right? And gorgeous spot, very convenient. But these old streetcars ran 24/7. And that's a long time ago. And there's a lot of events that have happened in life since then, but I can still hear today the screech of the streetcar stopping and going. They were noisy. They rattled. They weren't like these nice quiet ones now. And I mean, there was just a lot of noise. Right. And it was 24/7, and it ran every 20 minutes or something like that, you know, and it was constant. Like it was just, and it was noisy. And I never, ever adjusted to it. And I was actually on the lakeshore for quite a few years.
I mean, when you own, maybe you can adjust for that by putting in some soundproofing or something. But, you know, when you're renting, certainly not.
Even in a house, there's still certain things you're not going to. Even in an apartment, yeah, put up your layered curtains, put in, carpets on the floor, have music playing in another room if you want. But at nighttime, it's even really more difficult.
Sound is so much better at night.
Yeah, and if you don't have air conditioning, you must leave the window open at times to get that draft in. So it's never just one thing is my point, right?
Yeah.
If you can have air conditioning and your windows closed, it's not going to impact it the same way as you don't have AC and you're going to leave the window open.
Well, and there's also cost considerations, right? Like if if you have to turn on the AC because you can't have the window open, that's going to add up. More electricity use. If you're commuting long distances, especially with the price of gas these days, wear and tear on your car, your insurance can be affected by the length of your commute. All these are extra costs.
And how long before you have to buy another car, which is a pretty major expense. So, the cost that cost me to buy a car, even a used car, is still more money than it cost my aunt to buy a house in a Etobicoke in 1960s, right?
Yeah, I mean, maybe in some cases you're better off to buy in that not so desirable neighborhood with the noise around if you can mitigate it and make it so that you can live with it and
exactly. So if you can
all that time on the road and
you can get there's lots of beautiful little homes that have been remodeled or you can remodel or not, depending on your budget. It's still better to have a little house. I mean, listen, there's not a neighborhood in the GTA that you can't not walk at night. Okay? There's certain precautions that we all should take. We should all be aware of our surroundings, but we can travel anywhere pretty much, with reasonable safety. So when we start classifying good neighborhoods and bad neighborhoods, it's not enough for me to decide what it is you're looking for.
Right.
So that's why I can look at it. Now, if it's the age of the home and you think you can't get it in a certain neighborhood, well, maybe there's an infill there.
Yeah.
If it's too expensive, well, then maybe again we can get that home with a nice little apartment in it that will help offset that cost and still put you in that certain neighborhood. There's many things we can do. Worst comes to worst, and we don't have any of those options. We can get you a little old house in as not a new neighborhood, and it could be the least expensive neighborhood in town, but it'll keep you in town. And in the least expensive neighborhood, we can still get you a cute little home that is going to be yours. You may not have the garage. You may not have the spa-like backyard. You can create what you need to create, or you can build your equity and move it up.
Yep. Well,
Once
that's
you've gotten a home, even in the least favorable neighborhood and the least favorable home in that neighborhood, you will still build equity.
And you'd be surprised, I lived in Melbourne for about 10 years. Neighbors were the greatest. I lived near the Rouge Valley. Yeah. That was something I never even considered when I bought, but that was a huge importance to me, especially when I was dropping weight, going for a walk in a natural setting in the middle of the city. You really couldn't put a price on that.
I've owned properties in very highly coveted neighborhoods and in very not coveted neighborhoods and in different towns. And I can tell you that one that I had in a very highly favorable, highly desired neighborhood in Toronto, when crime happened, it was severe. It was muggings, it was break-ins, it was trying to rip a child out of a woman's arms, it's things like that. Very severe things that make you afraid. There's a property that I've owned in a neighborhood that gets a lot of flack. Nobody wants to live there, nobody wants to do it. In that neighborhood, the neighbors watch out for you. They take care of you as nothing to get a message. Hey, I haven't seen any movement at your place in a couple of days. Is everything okay?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's like, wow.
Yep.
Right. So what is it you're looking for? And let us help you take that balance of both. You can get a home in a very coveted neighborhood, and
Mm-hmm.
you can have one neighbor that can make your life a living hell. Now,
because someone has money doesn't mean they're not nuts.
right?
Yeah.
they just got more to go nuts with. You know, so
Just a nicer car and a nicer house that they're going nuts in.
yeah. So there's many things. So maybe it's a rural property you need after all. And maybe how close can we get to the city for you for the rural that would help you? We don't have to go too far to get you 1 acre of land if you really need that space and that breathing space. You can do that. I've done that too. So I've tried out all the different property types. I've lived it. And I'm not going to say there's no such thing as a bad neighborhood, but in comparison to even some places in the States, we don't even have to go any further than that. You know, some places, other places in Canada have some really, really rough spots as well. We've got it good here. So we've got a lot of flexibility in what you can take in a neighborhood and what you can't, not based on what, you know, a family member says about a neighborhood, but let's take those statistics, you know, and see if you're worried about this. Let's do this. And there's certain things we do. There are times when I had people, so for example, there are seniors that are certain buildings I wouldn't want to put them in, right? And I'm not comfortable with it. So, and I would be like, or I'd have a, you know, single female, and there were concerns and abilities for her to protect herself and things. There's certain buildings, certain streets, certain areas. I would come out and say, you know, I'm not comfortable with those. Yes, they fit your budget, but I have concerns about this for your safety. Would you consider instead? And then I would find options for them so that we could consider what options that, you know, would work best. So there's a lot to what's in a neighborhood, what you want in a neighborhood, what streets are in a neighborhood, how close you are to the main road, the highway, the schools, the shopping, the, you know, the fitness center, what you want to accomplish.
Well, it was interesting what you said about living in good neighborhoods and, well, sorry, more desirable neighborhoods and neighborhoods less desirable.
Yeah.
With you know, the serious crimes, and it's like, well, if you think about it, if I'm going to rob someone's house, I'm going to go where the money is, right? I'm maybe not the bridle path because they probably have really good security systems and private security and things like that. But you know, why not Forest Hill or the beach or someplace like that? Like the stuff in their houses to steal is probably going to be worth more. So
same as the vehicles that are being stolen. Look at the increase we've had in vehicle theft.
100%. Like
you know, and the neighborhoods that it's happening in are not bad neighborhoods.
Yeah. So
that we call bad neighborhoods.
If you know, you can get around the city, so can people that are going to steal your car or break into your house, right? So
yeah. So there's a lot to think about in terms of your quality of life, your lifestyle, what you want to accomplish. Then we decide. See, to me, the best neighborhood is the neighborhood that fits your overall life picture.
That makes a lot of sense, Sharon.
And I think that's the best place to leave it for anyone. So don't take neighborhoods off of the table. Let's just look at what you need and the best places that we can get for you. If we can get options for you, all the better. Right?
Well, the key is getting in the market, because once you
the more flexibility you have, I can get you in the market. It's just where and how and what type of property. But you know, if you're pre-approved, we can get you in the market. It just might not be the way that you picture it right now. And we'll get you in a decent home and get you safe, you know?
There might be a few houses between your first condo and, you know, your dream home, but you know, you work at it, maybe you get there. So, and
enjoy each one of them. Each one can be a nugget for you, no matter what it is. So take your budget. We'll work with you on your budget, because you know what, again, some will say, well, I'm going to find that extra money, and they'll borrow it or get it from their parents just to get a higher mortgage to get in a different neighborhood. But then you've got no quality of life because you're mortgage poor. You know, And so regardless of the stipulations, if there's families and different things going to happen to help you out, you know, like there's things that it's just not worth it just for the money or just to have a certain address.
A great house, but no great furniture.
Yeah. Yeah. But if you can't have a quality of life outside of it, is it worth it to you? And I think that's one of the most beautiful things I've seen come out of the pandemic, to be honest with you, is that people have a lot more respect for the quality of life over the rat race, quality of life over the amount of debts that you carry. And they saw a lot more options for living and styles of living. And I think that's beautiful. It opened up many doors that they didn't think would open, and never had time to think about it, never thought it was on their radar. So it's out there. There is a home. You don't have to buy a name on a neighborhood. You don't have to do that. You can if you want to. We got it for you. But we also have the other options for you that will still give you a nice home and nice neighbors.
There you go.
Right? So
all right.
That's it, Rick. Talk to you later.
Sounds good. Have a good one. You too.